Pilgrim, thanks for streaming with us. Bail denied for Sean Combs. The judge saying the defendant's violence was starkly depicted in the now infamous 2016 video at the Intercontinental Hotel. The judge cited what he called Combs's propensity for violence, adding, "It is impossible for the defendant to demonstrate that he poses no danger to the community." This coming hours after the verdict. The jury finding Combs not guilty on the most serious charges he faced, racketeering, conspiracy, and 2 counts of sex trafficking. But they did find him guilty on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. After the verdict was read, Combs turned to his family and said, "I'm coming home." He then kneeled on the ground, appearing to pray.
Right now, a storm is brewing in Hollywood. This trial was meant to make history, but no one expected the shocking twists that came with it. Sean Diddy Combs, a name synonymous with power, music, and wealth, now finds himself at the center of one of the most talked about trials in celebrity history. Tonight, we dive deep into the shocking verdict, the stunning bail denial, and what this all means for Diddy's future.
Combs' son Christian celebrating the decision.
Everybody watching, so happy. My pop's coming home.
But that is not what's happening tonight. Combs is still in custody. Let's bring in ABC News legal contributors Brian Buckmeyer and Bernardo Villalona. Brian, let's start with you here. A lot of people thought that Combs might walk out of that courthouse today. What happened?
So ultimately, as you said in the lead up, the judge said that there's a propensity to violence, that based on the video of the Intercontinental Hotel, as well as the evidence in the case, even though he was not convicted of the violence that was associated with the sex trafficking, the violence that was associated with the racketeering conspiracy, it can still be used against him for the purposes of bail. Bail was denied. We're going to see a sentencing come later. But I suspect, and Bernardo, tell me if I'm wrong.
On July 2nd, 2025, a verdict was reached that left the nation in disbelief. Sean Diddy Combs, once known for his unrivaled success in the music world, now stands convicted but not on all charges. The jury found him not guilty of sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy, but guilty of 2 counts related to transportation to engage in commercial sex acts. But that wasn't the end of the story.
I suspect there's going to be a writ. And I think that the defense, probably next week, will go right to the Second Circuit and try again to try to get him released.
Were you surprised that he didn't walk out today?
I wasn't surprised at all, because you have to think that this judge is in a unique circumstance in the sense that he has heard all the evidence in this case for the last 7 weeks. And he's also heard evidence that wasn't introduced before this jury. So he's in a unique circumstance to know what is his propensity for violence. And also, when you're talking about what happened in this case, remember that a lot of the violence happened behind closed doors. Who's going to police that? Who's going to report that? So there's nothing that he can put in place, a condition to protect the community from Sean Combs.
Okay, Bernard, break down the verdict for us that we found out today.
That's right, the bail was denied. A judge citing Combs' propensity for violence and referencing the now infamous 2016 hotel security footage where he was seen physically attacking his ex, Cassie Ventura. The shockwaves have rattled Hollywood. As the verdict was read, Diddy's reaction was mixed. He sat in the courtroom calm yet visibly tense, before turning to his family and mouthing, "I'm coming home." Then, a brief moment of prayer on the ground before the weight of the judge's decision took hold.
Yes, so as we all know, racketeering conspiracy, he was found not guilty. But in terms of the racketeering conspiracy, you needed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that there was an enterprise and there was an agreement within this enterprise to engage in 2 of the predicate acts. You would think, hey, you found Sean Combs guilty of 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution, and all you needed to prove was 2 predicate acts. But guess what? Despite proving the 2 predicate acts, you didn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Combs' enterprise was actually an enterprise that was built with an agreement to engage in these predicate acts. So that arson, that kidnapping, that bribery, no enterprise. The sex trafficking, we knew that it was going to be difficult as to Cassie and as to Jane, because that forced fraud or coercion.
His supporters held their breath, waiting for what came next. But the judge's decision to keep him in custody sent shockwaves across the legal world. So, what went wrong for Diddy? Was the jury right to acquit him of the most serious charges? Legal experts are now dissecting the case with a fine-tooth comb. Even though he wasn't convicted of trafficking, the violence connected to his behavior, particularly the hotel video, weighed heavily on the bail decision. This is about the public's safety. The jury's decision wasn't just about the evidence. It was about the narrative that Diddy had created for years, a story of dominance, control, and now allegations. that won't soon be forgotten.
Because there were numerous text messages and messages having to deal with these women wanting to freak off or wanting to engage in these hotel nights. And I think that did leave seeds of doubt for this jury to convict Sean Combs of those counts. So basically, that's what we have. Transportation to engage in prostitution. Very clear that from the 27 escorts that were mentioned during this trial, that they were paid for commercial sex acts and that they were transported across state lines to engage in them.
Right. And I know you said you were surprised. A lot of people were surprised about this verdict. Why?
I was surprised specifically as to the Cassie of it all, right? I thought if there was going to be sex trafficking because of the violence, I thought it might be difficult for a jury to really walk that tightrope of saying.
But it's not just the legal world. Buzzing fans, celebrities, and critics are all reacting to the verdict, with some rallying behind Diddy and others questioning how justice is served when celebrities are involved. Cassie Ventura's attorney made a powerful statement, emphasizing that the courage to speak out in such a high-profile case will forever change how the public views power dynamics in Hollywood. And it's not just Cassie. The aftermath of this trial has inspired others to speak out. But what brought us here? Diddy's history is a turbulent one, rife with feuds, controversies, and high-profile battles. From his explosive feud with Suge Knight to the infamous East Coast-West Coast rap wars, his rise to the top has been anything but smooth. But now, his past may be catching up with him.
This is a relationship that involved a lot of violence, but the violence wasn't used to traffic her. It was just violence for violence sake. And I could see either side going with either decision in that. But to piggyback on what Bernardo is saying is, I think the difficulty was the criminal conspiracy. I don't think that there was one because, again, as Bernardo said, if you have two transportation to engage in prostitution, those are your predicate acts. So the only reason why there is no RICO, it has to be that they did not find there's a criminal enterprise. Now, is that because KK, Christina Coram, didn't testify? Because D-Rock didn't testify? Because the loyal lieutenants, as the government put them as, didn't take the stand? Maybe. And maybe hindsight's 20/20, and they would think to themselves, maybe we should have put those people on and that would have carried the day. But
Diddy has long been a figure of controversy. His ability to control and influence the entertainment industry is undeniable. But as we've seen, power has its consequences. Now, the question is, what happens next? With sentencing scheduled for October 3rd, 2025, Diddy faces up to 20 years behind bars. Will he walk free or will the courts deliver a hard blow? They'll consider everything: his criminal history, character, the violence in his past, and, of course, the ongoing media storm surrounding him. For Diddy, this trial is far from over, and with the upcoming sentencing, the question of whether he will face jail time remains up in the air.
we have at least two predicates, so there's only one reason why there's no RICO.
Absolutely. This would have been a different case had the prosecution, the government, called KK and flipped her, give her a cooperation agreement to testify against Sean Combs to give us more insight as to what criminal acts that took place and what the agreement was, to give us more insight for that jury to know. The jury would have been able to comprehend a cooperation agreement or given her immunity, because sometimes you have to make deals with the devil to be able to get the inside information.
Okay, so what happens next? What can we expect at the sentencing hearing for Combs?
Ooh.
So even before you get to the sentencing, between now and then, at some point in time, Sean Combs will sit down with someone from the probation department within the Southern District of New York.
As news of the verdict spread, social media was set ablaze. Fans and followers are divided, with some showing unwavering support for Diddy, while others call for justice. "He's an icon," shouted one fan, but others questioned the fairness of the trial. Can an icon like Diddy really escape his past? Or does this trial represent a turning point for Hollywood's reckoning? Whether it's the thrill of the trial, the rise of social media outrage, or the shock of the legal system, one thing is certain: Diddy's legacy is forever changed. The culture of Hollywood is shifting, and the fight for justice continues. What happens in the coming months will not only determine Diddy's fate, but the future of how we view power in the entertainment industry. This case isn't over yet, and with every twist and turn, one thing is clear: the story of Sean Diddy Combs will continue to captivate, shock, and provoke. What do you think? Is justice being served, or is there more to this story than meets the eye? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more exclusive coverage on this trial and more shocking celebrity news.
And they will create what's called a PSI, or pre-sentencing investigation. And with that, they'll look at Sean Combs' criminal history, which we know he doesn't have. They'll look at his personal characteristics, mental health, substance abuse, personal characteristics. They'll look at any kind of mitigating or aggravating circumstances. And what they'll do is they'll create a sentencing guideline. They'll give a range of months that they believe the judge should follow in one way, shape, or form as to what Sean Combs should be facing. Now, both sides have already kind of done their calculations. The defense believes that he should get anywhere from 21 to 27 months. The government believes anywhere from 51 to 63 months. And if you're as bad at math as I am, that's basically the government saying 4 to 5 years, and the defense saying just shy of 2 years or so, or just a little higher of 2 years.
So how do they decide what he actually gets?
So probation gives you the guideline, right? And then the government is going to ask, as they said, they're going to ask for a significant amount of jail time for aggravating factors to account. And I think the smartest thing that they will do is they'll say, these aren't just to transportation to engage in prostitution. Here are the 27 escorts. Here are the 2 alleged victims. And here are all the flights. There are dozens of them. And they'll try to use that as aggravating. And they'll also use the violence as aggravation as well. The defense is going to look at all the positive things that you can think about for Sean Combs as mitigation. He donated millions of dollars to HBCUs. He did this for the community. He did that. He was a pillar of society for all of this. And that's why it should be lower. And the judge will take all of those facts and ultimately come up with a decision.
He doesn't have a criminal history. He hasn't been previously.
He doesn't really have a criminal history, but you have to think when it comes to sentencing, especially when it comes to a federal sentence, the judge can take into account bad acts, meaning incidents that you have engaged in that you may have not been arrested for, you may not have been convicted of, but does show your propensity and the type of person you are. This judge is going to try to get the sentence that reflects, one, deterrence, sending a message to the public that this type of behavior will not be stand for. In terms of rehabilitation, what is the best sentence that will rehabilitate Sean Combs so that way when he is ultimately released, he wouldn't be committing these same acts? Punishment. Punishment. How do you punish a person for the acts that they've committed? So why is transportation to engage in prostitution? It's not just 2 acts, but we're talking about dozens and dozens of you transporting these commercial workers for the purposes of sex.
I would say he doesn't have a criminal record, but he does have a criminal history.
Yes.
And that difference is going to be big for him.
Brian, Bernarda, thank you so much for being here with us. And just a moment ago, I believe the Combs family was walking out of the courtroom. I believe we have some video of that. Joining me now, though, is ABC News investigative producer Tanya Simpson, who has been covering this trial from the very beginning. We're seeing that video there of the family leaving the courtroom just moments ago. Tanya has been in the courtroom with the family and everyone as they've watched this entire trial. You were there today in the room when the verdict was read.